Mortgage Weekly. I'll just get my microphone set up here, everyone. There we go. All right, so if you're just joining me here today now, we're talking about the most livable cities in Canada. We're going to be talking about this in just a few moments. We're going to look at Ontario specifically. If you're a Canadian mortgage holder or someone that's looking to buy a home in Canada, you may want to look into this specific episode because we're going to be talking about cities in Canada that are most livable. This is for family life. We're going to be looking at cost, affordability, property taxes, all of that stuff. As a matter of fact, let me bring up here, we're talking about safety, healthcare, demographics, housing, so amenities, things like recreational facilities, entertainment options, volunteer opportunities. We're talking about transportation. Do the cities offer good transportation, ease of transportation, accessibility of transportation, getting around the city, climate as well? Do these cities have a good climate? Are they warmer, or do they have a lot of snow? Do you have to spend a lot of your time shoveling? That sort of thing. But really, my focus here is more housing related. So as much as I want to have a city that has good demographics, good economy, good education, I love helping clients get into a home that is very affordable and that they don't need to spend most of their money on essentially paying for. And that's really important these days because cost of living has gone up so high and it's really difficult to find anything that fits anyone's budget anymore because of the increase in cost of living. So if you're wondering what the most livable cities in Canada are, specifically Ontario, stay tuned. I got some really cool news for you. So let's look here. Before we get into that list, I'll talk a little bit about each category and how the list was put together based on each of these categories. And then as we get through the list, you can give me your comments. And if you think that you live in Canada's most livable city, what is your city? Let it me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what your city that you live in is today. All right, so looking at the economy specifically, we're looking at average household income, unemployment rates, things like that. So does the city offer good employment opportunities? Are there good employment options available in this city? That sort of thing. That's the economy side of things. Housing. For housing, it's used the property tax data. Obviously, the lower the better. Average household dwelling expenditure, things like mortgage payments, cost of acquiring the property, or if you're renting, the cost of rent, and the proportion of housing that households that have spent more than 30% of their income on housing. So this is going to be also one of the criteria that was used. If you're looking for the list today in total and you want to do some more research on this criteria, I sourced this data from the Globe and Mail. So you can actually look this list up. If you have a subscription to Globe and Mail, you can look up the list right now and find it that way. Demographics as well. We're looking at population changes. Is it a young population, older population, diversity factor? Also, we're looking at healthcare. Healthcare is something that is really well known in Canada as being one of the reasons why Canadians love living in Canada. So we're going to be looking at healthcare and how that ties in to it being the most livable city. Specifically, the more healthcare options per population, the higher the better. Proximity to healthcare is important. We're looking also at the frailty index and the proportion of the population perceiving their physical health as good to excellent. The higher, the better. All right. What else are we looking at? We're looking at safety, likelihood of crime, proportion of the population having good to great confidence in the police. Um, and we're also looking at education, the population, the proportion of population with education beyond high school, the higher the better. Now, this metric, I don't really understand why they're using this, because the higher education, the better. I mean, that's great, but how does that make a city more livable? I would think if there was a lot more trades also in that city, that would also make the city more livable as well. Because, uh, if you have a lot of trades, there's a lot of people that can help you fix things around the house, plumbers, electricians, that sort of thing. Because if there's not many of those, then it's going to make those services even that much more in demand in those areas, harder to get and possibly more expensive. Uh, so there's also community centers, green living space index, and the proportion of population having a strong sense of belonging to the community as well is one of the factors here that we are looking at. Looking also amenities, and this is an interesting list here for amenities. One of the things that this category includes is coffee chains, donut chains, pizza shops, quick service restaurants, that sort of thing. The higher the better per 10,000 people. Also, they're looking at cannabis stores. The higher amount of cannabis stores for the population, the better. And also the financial institutions per 10,000 people, gyms per 10,000 people, movie theaters, places of worship, proximity to childcare, grocery store, library, parks, that kind of thing. I mean, it's interesting that cannabis stores has their own category, and looks like the beer store or LCBO is not listed as being one of the categories here. Also, there's also transportation as being one of the main things. So, ease of transportation, proportion of households within 45 minutes of an airport, proximity to transit, walkable community. Is this a community where you can walk to your employment, pharmacies, childcare, healthcare, groceries, that kind of thing? And climate. How much is the temperature different? Is there huge swings in temperature, or is the temperature pretty stable? Is it pretty warm? Is it pretty cold? Is there a lot of snow? That sort of thing. Also, there's a lot of sub rankings. I'm just going to cover off these very quickly here because I don't really want to get into this specifically. I want to really get into the list of the most livable cities in Canada. We have young professionals as being one of the sub rankings, raising kids as being one of the sub rankings, midlife transitions, how they are handled, one of those are sub rankings, also retirement, newcomers, and entrepreneurs. So, a very extensive criteria has been used to put together this list of the top most livable cities in Canada. So, with that, I present to you the top most livable cities in Canada, specifically today, Ontario. So, we'll start with number 5. And can you guess what the 5th most livable city in Ontario is today? You can feel free to take a stab at it, leave it in the comment section below. And if you have your city that you want me to look up on this list, let me know in the comments below what your city name is, and I can put that in the video as well. I will be talking about my hometown and where I live today as well at the end of the video, and letting you know where they sit on this list. So, number 5, 5th most livable city in Canada is Pickering, Ontario. Actually, my mistake, is Vaughan, Ontario. City very close to Toronto. You may know Vaughan as being actually Toronto. If you've ever been to Toronto and you've taken the 401 to Toronto and then got on the 400 going north, you probably haven't even blinked and you're in Vaughan. And all of a sudden, you probably think, well, this is actually still Toronto. I haven't seen a delineation between Toronto and Vaughan. Well, typically that point where you know you're in Vaughan, and this is where I knew I was in Vaughan as a kid, is it's Canada's Wonderland. If you're passing by Canada's Wonderland, you know that you're in Vaughan, or what used to be called Maple. So Vaughan is the fifth most livable city in Canada. This actually makes a lot of sense, as much as I don't want it to make a lot of sense. But Vaughan has slightly cheaper housing than Toronto. Also, it has Canada's Wonderland. It has transportation. It is full of young people. It does have the subway line that goes to Toronto. So, also has the GO train, the GO bus, lots of things, lots of opportunities, very close to universities, and lots of highly educated people. So, makes sense that Vaughan has made number 5 on this list. Okay, looking at number 4 on this list, the fourth most livable city in Ontario, Canada. And you might not think this is even one of the ones that came to your mind, but it's actually Oakville, Ontario. Despite Oakville having a really, really high average price to their homes, it made the list of most livable cities in Ontario, Canada. And again, this has to do with the fact that Oakville is very accessible to transit, very accessible to healthcare. Housing, I mean, even though it's really expensive, it probably scored very low on that list. But property taxes are fairly reasonable considering the house prices in Oakville. The economy is very well stabilized in Oakville. You have a lot of employment opportunities close to Toronto. You're on the transit line there. You have high average household income in Oakville, good diversity, and lots of access to healthcare. And it's also a very safe city. There's not much crime that happens in Oakville compared to other cities in Ontario and Canada. Lots of green space. And as I mentioned, some of the amenities, gyms, movie theaters, places of worship, childcare, and cannabis stores, we have high proximity to those available in Oakville. So, good news for Oakville, good news for Vaughan. They make the fifth and fourth top Ontario livable places in Canada. So, what is number 3? Well, I said it at the beginning of this video, and that is Pickering. Pickering, Ontario made it as the third most livable city in Ontario, Canada. And this actually came as a surprise to me initially, but really it should not be a surprise because, again, Pickering, right next to Toronto, just like Vaughan, not so much like Oakville. Between Toronto and Oakville, you have Mississauga, which is another city that is kind of meshed between the two. But, you know, Pickering being just east of Toronto, you have the ability to buy housing in Pickering. And one of the benefits that I see right away as a mortgage broker when you buy a house in Pickering is that when you buy a house in Pickering, you're paying Ontario land transfer tax to purchase that property, obviously. But when you buy a house in Toronto, which is just a few kilometers west, you're paying Toronto land transfer tax as well as Ontario land transfer tax, which doubles the amount of land transfer tax that you have to pay to acquire that property. And that makes a big barrier to entry for housing for anyone wanting to buy in the Toronto region. So if you're buying a home in Pickering, you're automatically slashing your closing costs in half pretty much by that decision. Pickering, very close to healthcare. You have lots of hospitals in the area, very safe. They have a police force. They have good demographics, good diversity there in Pickering. Educational opportunities are abound. There's colleges in around Pickering. There's also universities available within 45 minutes drive, which is pretty good for Pickering as well. We have a good community, good amenities. Again, amenities that we're talking about here for the top livable cities in Canada are things like financial institutions per 10,000 people, gyms per 10,000 people, places of worship per 10,000 people, and cannabis stores. This is one of those things that has been thrown into the list. Cannabis stores per 10,000 people and climate. So, Vaughan, Oakville, Pickering are fifth, fourth, and third most livable cities in Ontario, Canada. All right, so what else do we have here in terms of most livable cities in Ontario, Canada? Well, number two may take you as a surprise. This is actually further away from Toronto, and this would be Ottawa, Ontario. Ottawa, Ontario coming in as the second most livable city in Ontario, Canada. It's Ontario's capital. I like Ottawa. I love visiting Ottawa. The thing about Ottawa that I've always found interesting is it seems like the nightlife just dies downtown after 7 o'clock p.m. And that's kind of strange. It's like everyone goes home and that's it. You know, that's all she wrote. So with Ottawa, it's an interesting place, but it is also number two on the list. And that makes sense as well because more affordable housing than Pickering. You have the OC Transpo, which is the Ottawa transportation system. They have buses, rapid transit, that sort of thing. Also, good amenities, good climate for the most part. I mean, it does get pretty cold, but overall, pretty good climate, good community, good education. I think there's two universities in Ottawa, Carleton University and University of Ottawa. Good safe city, obviously very safe because Canada is going to make sure that Ottawa, the capital, is very safe at all times. That's just the way Canada rolls. And we also have good healthcare. Obviously, there's going to be excellent healthcare in Ottawa for all the politicians that work out of Ottawa. All right. Housing, it is a little bit more affordable on the housing side compared to Oakville and Vaughan. So maybe that's why housing is one of those things that is up there for Ottawa. And economy. In Ottawa, very strong government economy, lots of government positions. So lots of high paying government positions are available in Ottawa, making Ottawa the second most livable city in Ontario, Canada. And if you're just joining me now, we're doing the most livable cities in Ontario, Canada. And one of the things I'm really focusing on is housing affordability. And this list takes that into account, as well as all the other variables as a livable city should. We have Vaughan, we have Oakville, Pickering, and then Ottawa as being the top livable cities in Ontario. All right, and the most livable city in Ontario as per the Globe and Mail for 2024. If you haven't guessed it already, I'm going to give you a hint. It is close to Toronto, and it's on the same side as Oakville, and it's not Mississauga. Well, it's also not Hamilton because Hamilton doesn't make lists in the top 5 like this. It's getting close though, but it's Burlington, Ontario. Burlington, Ontario comes in as the top most livable city in Ontario, Canada. So yay, congratulations, Burlington. Way to go. I've been to Burlington. I had when I lived in Hamilton for 10 years, I did visit Burlington quite a bit. I know that they have an IKEA, so that's already a great move here by Burlington being on this list. Lots of parks, lots of schools, good waterfront. They also have a really neat provincial park, Bronte Provincial Park, which you can camp and also use as a day use campground in Burlington. So really cool stuff here happening in Burlington. I love Burlington. I have family that lives in Burlington. So I welcome Burlington coming in the top spot as being the top most livable city in Ontario, Canada. Also very close to transit. You have transit coming in from the GO Transit, you have the Burlington Transit, and you also have the HSR, which is the Hamilton Street Railway Transit System. It comes in between Hamilton and Burlington, and if you are living in Burlington, you can go visit Hamilton and vice versa. So really cool to see Burlington make this list. I'm excited to see Burlington make this list. If I was to live in any other city, I might consider Burlington myself. All right, so you might think, where's my city? Well, the list includes many cities. So let's take a look at my hometown, London, Ontario. I grew up in London, Ontario. I was born there. And let's see where it made the list. All right, if it made the list at all. Well, looking at this list, London, Ontario did not make the list, unfortunately. And the list is 100 cities in Canada specifically. So out of the 100 most livable cities in Canada, London, Ontario does not make the list. Cities, though, that came in ahead of London, Ontario, interestingly enough, are cities like, obviously, Ottawa, Ontario, Pickering, Ontario, Oakville, Ontario, Guelph, Ontario was not in the top 5 for Ontario, but much higher. Hamilton, Ontario came in higher than London, Ontario. Waterloo, higher, as well as Toronto came in higher than London. Also, King City, Ontario came in higher than London. And believe it or not, Niagara Falls, Ontario came in higher than London, Ontario. So quite sad to see London, Ontario not make the list this year. However, that probably is a lot to do with the fact that, growing up in London, it's not a very diverse community. It's also not really connected to any transit. We don't have any rapid transit going to Toronto. We don't have GO buses or GO trains. The London Transit Commission does have its own London Transit buses and rapid transit that runs through London, but it's only in London. And although London has Fanshawe College and University of Western Ontario, it did not make the list. Housing wise, London's housing has shot up considerably, so we do not see any good housing affordability on the horizon for London either. So that is London, Ontario, and I live in Aurelia, Ontario. And what I'm going to take a look now at is, did Barrie or Aurelia make this list of the top cities, most livable cities to live in Ontario? And looking at the list, Aurelia did not make the list for being the most livable city in Ontario, not even in the top 100. And in the top 100, Barrie, Ontario did not make that list either. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Aurelia, Barrie, also not very diverse communities, also not very connected to transit, very car dependent. If you live in Aurelia, it's almost like it's either you're car dependent or you can walk everywhere, but there's no transit really. There's a small little bus company, Aurelia Transit, that operates in the city of Aurelia, but we don't really have a transit system that is very useful in terms of that's practical. It's mainly those who don't have vehicles at all, and that can't really afford vehicles, rather than for those who work and want to replace a vehicle with transit. It's a different priority, and I see that a lot here in Aurelia. For any other cities, though, there's also Wasaga Beach in my area and Collingwood. Let's see if they made the list. Collingwood did not make the list. And what about Wasaga Beach? Did they make the list? They did not make the list either. So interesting to see that's the fact here, that Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, Barrie, or Aurelia did not make the list for the top 100 Canadian cities, and not in the top um, Ontario cities out of that 100 Canadian cities. If you're looking at getting this information and looking at it in more detail, check out the Globe and Mail. All you got to do is Google the most livable cities in Canada, and you can see what the top 100 most livable cities in Canada are. I found this article online, and you can as well. If you're looking at booking an appointment with a mortgage broker, I've been financing mortgages for 14 years. You can book an appointment with me through the link in the video description below. You can book a 5-minute call and we can chat about your mortgage and any questions you have about this video or regarding your mortgage. Let's get into some of the mortgage statistics for this week. I want to cover those off with you. Some important dates we have to watch are we have a rate announcement coming next week on April the 10th. The rate announcement will be a highly anticipated rate announcement because a lot of folks think that rates may come down this April the 10th for the first time. However, I do not see that happening whatsoever. US inflation did go up on Easter Monday to 3.2%. And I totally believe that because US inflation has gone up, even though Canadian inflation has gone down to 2.8%, the Bank of Canada is just going to hold and keep where they are at on interest rates this time around, and probably next time around, and wait until more real data to come through for inflationary numbers for Canada being where they need to be at before they lower rates. And that is 2%. We're looking for a 2% target on interest rates for Canada, not 2% target on interest rates, 2% target on inflation rates in Canada. We're at 2.8%. So we're getting closer, but not quite there yet. In addition to that, I think with interest rates in Canada, we are sitting with fixed rates a little bit lower than they were this time last year, which is great news. And why is that? Well, fixed rates have been coming down slightly because the market has been seeing that inflation data has been coming down in Canada. But that doesn't mean that rates have come down. They just come down slightly. And now that I'm seeing US inflation data come out a little higher, I honestly think that we may even see fixed rates go up a little bit further for the remainder of the spring and possibly the summer before they come down again in the fall because of this US inflationary data. So the important dates that you need to be aware of this month are April the 10th. That's when the Bank of Canada makes its interest rate decision for April, with another rate announcement coming out on June the 6th, I believe. Let me just double check. It will be June the 5th. And there will be also on April the 16th, Canadian inflation data will come out. And this will help us determine whether or not a June rate announcement will have a rate decrease or a pause or a rate increase. So in the meantime, thanks for watching today. My name is Joe Bladdock. I am a mortgage broker who has been financing real estate in Ontario, Canada for 14 years. If you're looking to chat with a mortgage broker, please connect with me. I can help you with your mortgage today. You can book a 5-minute appointment with me today in the link in the video description below. And I look forward to chatting with you. In the meantime, I hope you have a great day. And thanks for watching. And make sure you follow my channel, whether you're watching on TikTok or Instagram, or if you're watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see